Hello, everyone. Welcome to your Passion, Purpose, and Personal Brand podcast. This is Lisa McGuire, and I am back today with a repeat guest who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give you a little one. Today, we're back with Jim Huling. He is the author of the #1 worldwide best-selling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, now in its second edition and translated into 16 languages. He's also spent 4 decades in corporate leadership, including Fortune 500 companies, privately held companies, and more than a decade as CEO with his own company, recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's traveled the world extensively as a keynote speaker and held thousands of coaching sessions. So today we are so excited to welcome back Jim Huling. Welcome, Jim.
Lisa, thank you so much. And you and I are old and dear friends, which I think will be self-evident as we go through this conversation today. But what a joy to be with you on your phenomenal, highly successful podcast, which I listen to all the time. I can only say I'm kind of giddy now at the chance to be on a podcast with you and see where this wonderful conversation takes us.
All right. Well, I looked to see when it was that you were here last. It's been over 100 episodes ago. For those of you interested, go back and listen to episode number 14, which is called Bring Your Whole Self to Work and Your Life with Jim Huling and Sarah Huling-Tendler. So today we're going to shift the direction a little bit. We've been talking a lot about in the series of reinvention. And I know after holding thousands of coaching sessions that you probably know a thing or two about people going through a reinvention process. So where I want to start with this is, what are some signs that you see in people that they are on the verge of a reinvention process?
Or on the verge of needing a reinvention.
Yeah. Maybe we start there. They don't realize it yet, unaware.
And Lisa, if you don't mind a brief moment of self-disclosure, I not only know a lot about this from having coached quite a number of people. It's a common issue today, but I've been through this myself. So would you mind if I just kind of start with my own example of I was a CEO for a while, as you so graciously mentioned, and very proud of those years, was proud of the work that was done, proud of the company. Everything about that story was good. I was there 11 years, but what I don't often tell is that in the 9th year, I hit my own wall. I literally burned out in the 9th year of an 11-year tenure as CEO. And I think the great laughable moment for me is that I thought I was the only one who realized I had burned out, because I was, keeping the award-winning performance going as long as I could. But CEO years are a little bit like dog years. They might really be worth 7. I don't know, lots of pressure, lots of tough decisions, lots of things to do. So I reached my own point. And I will tell you, the first sign I had every single morning for 11 years, every single day, I walked down the same hallway to my office, which was at the end of the hallway on the side of the building. Every morning, 11 years, I walked down that hallway. And for 9 of those years, I was practically skipping down that hallway. I loved walking down that hallway. I had energy and purpose. And, I would say, good morning, and how are you guys doing? And it wasn't a show. I really was happy to be there. But when I crossed that invisible threshold that I really didn't see coming, but now help other people to see coming, I walked down the same hallway and I had no energy at all. It's a little bit like that Tom Hanks movie, where the prison guard is walking the person, and the guy says, dead man walking. Maybe that's a little graphic, Lisa, but I kind of felt that way. I kind of felt like dead CEO walking hall. There should be somebody shouting an alert, because I was really, I had nothing left to give. And it's maybe a longer story about life as a CEO. Maybe we'll do a podcast about that someday, But I think the first sign that I saw was energy. What used to be an effortless, I could summon my energy at a moment's notice, and somebody could say, hey, Jim, we've got an issue. We need to get on it right now. And I would just have this burst of energy. Or somebody would come in my office and say, you just won't believe, the greatest thing has happened. And again, whoosh, I'm like, yeah, tell me all about it, And then when you lose that, sadly, what most of us do is we try to impersonate that. We try to impersonate that same emotion. But instead of being effortless, it's costing us something to summon that up. And every time we pay that price, Lisa, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I think we give away a little piece of our soul every time we fake it. Every interaction, every day, every decision where we're faking it, we're losing parts of ourselves, even if we think we're giving an Academy Award-winning performance. So I think number one is energy. And I think the second thing, and I think you might say, well, these two things are kind of cousins, but I think creativity is the second thing that goes. You and I are people who've accomplished a lot in our lives, and I know we're proud and grateful for having accomplished it. And we know what it is to accomplish something through discipline, but we also know what it is to accomplish something through flow. And I'm not trying to be too abstract, woo-woo in this conversation. I mean, flow is a real thing, very well documented. Many books, great books have been written. You can research it for yourself. But the basic idea of flow is that when you're the right person doing the right thing in the right way at the right time, you are sort of aided by forces that aren't a direct result of your investment. You get a multiplier effect when you're aligned with what you're supposed to be doing with your life and when you know it. So when you have the absence of that, you can't really be creative. I mean, you can mechanically come up with 3 ideas. Lisa, here's 2 options of what we could do. I'm just sort of like digging through rock to get to those 2 ideas. But when you're in that state, those things are like popping around you like fireworks all the time. So second thing I think is creativity. But the third thing, and the thing that ultimately broke me as a CEO, was the sense of making a difference. I sort of lost that. And let's just say really fast, if you haven't been a CEO, but you've been an executive, you understand exactly what Lisa and I are talking about. Your job can turn into the problem, the person who receives every problem, the person who is expected to solve every dilemma, the person who is designated as the holder of every painful conversation. I mean, your job can actually be the last stop on a highway to a place you don't want to go, right? If you let it be, it can be. And so when you lose that sense of, gosh, does this matter? I mean, I'm working my 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever it is. I'm still giving a lot, but am I doing anything that makes a difference? Am I someday going to look back and celebrate all these problems I solved, all these things I did, or am I not? Am I going to regret that I used some of my best life force to do something that was honorable, but it wasn't meaningful? I think that's the real key. So 3 things to start with, I think are easy signs. If you've lost those 3 things, time to pause and reevaluate. Yeah.
So to go back and review, that was energy, creativity, and a sense of purpose. Is that correct? Yeah. Yes. And what I love particularly about the creativity part that really resonates with me, Jim, is when we are able to pull from ourselves. And as you were speaking of that, I could feel it in my heart that when I'm creative, I'm not working only from my head, but I'm working from my heart. It is part of me that is ingrained. It's my soul inside of me. It's my essence that says I get to contribute. I get to be in flow. And many times we'll hear that referenced as Gay Hendricks' zone of genius versus zone of excellence. But I know in a conversation that I was able to have on a podcast with him, what really struck me when he talked about zone of excellence is what we get paid to do. We get paid pretty well and we're good at it, but that's the road to burnout. So when you're talking about that creativity, where you go to that level of ease and flow, where you lose track of time, where you get to contribute parts of yourself that you're not selling off, but you're putting it for a better purpose. That's when we get to find that satisfaction. I love how you summarize those. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I think you summarized them better than I said them. But thank you for that recap. And if we ended on a point on that, I think the part where you sell off a part of yourself, that's a great phrase. I love how you interjected that, because I felt that in my heart as well. It costs you something and there's no ROI. But when you invest from the heart in something you believe in, you take a little bit of your energy to do it, but the return, you and I were just chatting about this last week on LinkedIn, that the ROI on heartfelt investments is huge. but we just don't realize it. And sadly, when we get exhausted or tired or burned out or disillusioned, or we get our hearts broken, we can lose a little bit of the resiliency that lets us rally and try again and then get the big return. So oftentimes I think of myself as a coach, like an emergency room physician. You've staggered into the emergency room, you had one breath left, you fell on the floor, please help me. I don't know, maybe this is too dramatic, but a person who's on their last moment, they don't have a lot left to give. But what a coach can do is breathe some life back into them so they rally, and then they make that heartfelt investment, get the return, and now they've started on an upward spiral of excellence and success and joy, But it takes a moment of intervention sometimes to be able to get people to that point.
It absolutely does. So what we just talked about was people who were unaware that it might be time to reinvent themselves. So let's say they see these signs and know, okay, I need to reinvent myself, or it's time for me to reinvent myself. I think I'm going to do this. What are some common hurdles that you see with people that think, okay, I want to do this, but what's holding them back next?
Oh yeah, I love this question, and I refer to them sometimes as dream killers. So a person who's burned out, tired, exhausted, disillusioned, whatever, pauses for a moment and says, wow, what I really loved when I was younger or freer or didn't have a mortgage or whatever, what I would have loved to have done with my life is ta-da. And the moment you say that, the dream killer comes in right out of the shadows, stabs you in the heart. And it stabs you in the heart usually with a single phrase, but you can't make a living doing that. Mm-hmm. That's the most deadly phrase in the world. That will almost crush any dream, because everybody needs money. Everybody needs to make an income. Everybody has some degree of concern or at least mindfulness over whether they're going to be able to make enough money. So you stab them right where they're the most vulnerable. And if you let somebody do that to you too early, you'll just cast that dream to the side. You'll say, oh, yeah, you're right. What a silly thought, right? But when people come in that moment, that's the very thing they need, I think. And so the hurdle is, I can't get paid to do that. I won't make enough money to do that. And then here, you and I are living examples that you can do something you love and you can make the living you want or need out of it. I'm not trying to say everybody can make a 10-figure income in 70 days. This is not that kind of podcast, thank goodness, or you and I wouldn't be on it.
No.
But what you can do is you can, by doing what you're supposed to be doing, work with purpose and meaning that adds value to people and to the world. You will find that there is a karmic retribution in the universe that just flows back to you. I can't get an example of it almost every day. The things that come back to me that I didn't create, but I feel or hope that they are somehow the full cycle return of something good I did for someone else some other time that I've now forgotten about. It was on its way back to me. So I think that's the first. Sorry if I went down a trail.
You're good. You're good.
So the first hurdle is I can't make money doing that. Mm-hmm. Second one is I am really proficient at this, and I don't know anything about that. If I'm a CFO and I dream of being a painter, it is a really hard visualization to leave my CFO-dom and all that it entails and pick up a brush and buy some paints and take a class, right? But I also think the antidote to that is the side hustle. One of the greatest things that's happened in our world in the last 4 years is the legitimacy of side hustle. So it is possible to nurture something up out of the ground and water it and fertilize it. And someday maybe it's big enough that you leave one thing for the other. But the dream killer comes in and says, well, you're really good at this. Nobody's going to buy a painting of yours. Have you seen your paintings, Lisa? They're not good at all. They look like children did, So I think that's the second one. And then here's the last one, but I'll just say it real fast, is the fear that nobody will go with me. Mm. Most of us have a support system, and we're blessed to have a support system. I have a wonderful gathering of friends that includes you, and I have family and loved ones and people who believe in what I do. And if I made a decision to do something radically different, they might not all come with me. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, the hardest one is your family. Lisa, I hope if you don't agree with this, I wish you'd say out loud. I wonder about this all the time. I think the last people you should tell that you're considering a radical shift is your family. because their love for you makes them want to protect you and say, oh, be careful. Oh, what about this? What are you going to do? And they'll just kill your dream right away before it even had a chance at life. So I think that third one is the fear that I'll have to do this all by myself. And where I am now, at least I'm surrounded by a community of people. Those are the three biggest hurdles that I deal with in my coaching.
Yeah, those are all great ones. And I will pick up and echo the part about telling your family. When I first made a pivot, when I left my job working for someone else to go out on my own, I was considering investing in a pretty large financial commitment to a program. And I had a member of my family like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That's too much money. There's no security. There's no prediction that that's going to work out well for you. But I didn't listen. I trusted my gut. I went ahead. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. But I think when your family is seeing you, you're successful where you are. We know who you are. And if you go through this and you hit some bumps, then who are you going to feel safe going to when you break down, when things aren't going well? It's us, right? And we're going to have to help pick you up. And that's not a place where we want to go. We want to keep you happy. You're fine where you are. So I think a lot of times that is some of those things that go along with that. But yeah, and I think also, people are thinking, what will people think of me? I'm a CFO and I'm going to become a painter. They're going to walk to the side and shake their head and say they've lost it, right? What's wrong with them? But I think when we get into groupthink, we tend to become very vanilla and we just kind of walk along as robots. So great answers there on that one, Jim. So that leads into, this resistance we have to change. And one of the areas that I see people that push back a little is when it comes to the idea of coaching, right? When people are looking at, okay, is it time to get a coach? And I think today coaching is much more accepted than what it was a while ago. And maybe you could speak to that. But what I see is coaching is one of the ways that you can really accelerate your growth. But sometimes people will say, I can't afford a coach. So how would you go about coaching someone who is considering the idea of coaching?
Yeah, what a beautifully asked question. No wonder your podcast is so successful, because you have this gift of asking a question in just the right way. And I love that. Don't you find it a little bit humorous that business is the last profession to recognize the need for coaching? There has never in the history of the world been a concert violinist who didn't have 10,000 hours under the tutelage of a master violinist. There's no professional baseball player who didn't have thousands of times at bat under the tutelage of some coach from Pee-wee to pro, saying, don't swing that way, swing this way, But we in business are like, well, I don't know about this coaching thing. I just think I don't know. I think it's funny, Lisa, though, that we're sort of the last to discover this or legitimize the need for coaching. And I'll tell you two things that really strike me about it in this time. Number one, I just say this quickly, but I think it may register with some people. I occasionally get the person whom the corporation has said, you need some coaching. One of my clients the other day, one of my new coaching clients came to me and said that she was in a meeting with her boss, and the boss said, send her to Jim. She needs some coaching. Like it was 30 years of hard labor. Come on. It was a punishment. And I got to talk to this person because I don't want to be introduced that way to anybody. But she was happily surprised when she came to me and found that it was a supportive, encouraging, uplifting experience, rather than one more test she had to pass. So I think part of it is the mindset around coaching. People shouldn't go to coaching because they're failing, although it's a great place to go if you are failing. People should go to coaching because they want to get better, no matter where they are. That's the broader interpretation. And that's the one that lights people like you and me up, right? I don't care where you are. I love helping you go from where you are to wherever you want to go, the next level. But I don't care where we start. That's fine with me. Well, coaching is one of the only places you have that kind of freedom. And then second, if you don't mind me adding a quick anecdote, is I have a firm belief, and not everybody has to share it, I don't know, but I've come to believe it, that every next level of your life will require a new version of you. So everybody take this the way I mean it, with a dose of humor as well, if you need to. That the 2013 version of Jim is not capable of surviving in 2024. He's not equipped, to meet the challenges or to maximize the opportunities. He can't do either one. Gosh, Lisa, I'm not sure the 2023 version of Jim is even ready for 2024. So we don't speak of raising your level or creating a new version of you as a dutiful task that you just have to find a way to do. It's not that at all. It's a joyful expansion in order to reap the benefit of surviving a challenge or seizing an opportunity. It's a happy thing, but it is still a requirement for those who want to see themselves continue to grow. I think that's really true. And I said in a post this week, and you made a lovely compliment to it, that the only things in life that aren't growing are the things that are dead. And maybe that's an organic, accurate metaphor, but it's also a life metaphor as well. When we stop the process of growing, we only have two definitions. You don't have a definition of stasis. We just have you're alive or you're dead. So in a sense, in a broader sense, when you choose to stop growing, you're really choosing to start dying, metaphorically or literally. We could go down either path, but it's still true. And is that what you want? And of course it's not, So the alternative is, well, okay, what do I feel called to do that would take me to another level, would expand my capability, would make me a more helpful resource? What is that? And then start with that, and you're right back on the path of growth.
Yes, I love the part about if you're not growing, you're dying, because really it is. And I think as humans, we want to get better. We've learned not to settle for where we are. However, there is value in being present. I think a lot of times we dream for something, and when we get there, we don't pause long enough to celebrate it, to look and think, how many years did I work to get to this place? How much effort did it take for me to be able to experience this? And we're really quick to just check off the box and think, oh, what's next? But no, I love that you're thinking about that. And, I think the corporate America thing is really interesting as well. Because I think a lot of times, whether it's as an entrepreneur or as someone in the corporate world, we want to look buttoned up. We want to look very professional. We want to look at the top of our game. But it's only when you feel safe to let your guard down can you express that, I want to do better, or I'm afraid what people are going to think about me. And it's when we get in that coaching situation that we have someone who will hold space for us, a very safe place that's accepting and empathetic, that can help you see things in you that you can't see in yourself. So some really great points on that. So thank you on that. Next I want to shift into, you referenced our LinkedIn conversations. And I think it's kind of funny. We met, as I said, a couple of years ago and started, had first conversation on the podcast. And since that time, our relationship has grown in the comment section of our post. So if you don't follow Jim and you don't follow me, check out our comments. We'll have some conversations that go on that are very interesting there if you want to continue more of this podcast. But I want to go back to something that I can't remember whether it's you or I that even brought this up. But it was something where we are hesitant to reinvent ourselves because we've listened to others for so long telling us what we needed to do, right? But when we get to about the middle of our life, and I don't want to call it a midlife crisis because I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's an opportunity. It's a door opening for us to stop and pause and ask, what am I doing with my life? I still hopefully have some years left where I can make something meaningful of it. But what has happened is parents have maybe told us what to study or what career to go in. Our peer group has influenced us on, you need to find a partner now, or it's time to have children. And I've seen so many people who probably made that decision who later regretted it, or they probably weren't meant to be in that position. And then career, climbing the corporate ladder. You've got to do this. And in order to climb that corporate ladder, you have to act in this particular way. So they get to this point in their life where they've listened so much to the shoulds that they think, okay, if I'm not there, I just need to do more of that. So my follow-up on that is, we're on this treadmill. How do you go about helping people see how to escape all of these narratives we've heard?
I love this question. Boy, did you ask it well. Treadmill is a good metaphor too, because on a treadmill, you're exerting all the same energy. You're just getting nowhere. You picked that metaphor just perfectly for how that feels, to be in that spot. And I will offer you what I think of as a root answer that maybe applies to lots of the symptoms of this particular thing. And that is that when we have given away too much of our own autonomy, power, self-presence to the opinions of other people, we've allowed them to tell us what we should do, and we sort of dutifully followed their playbook. Let's assume they're well-intentioned. They're just trying to help us. And let's assume we're well-intentioned. We're just trying to figure life out. This is not a story about anybody having done something wrong to us. But I think what happens is when we lack a clear core definition of who we are, what we think we came into this life to contribute, how much we're willing to do to make that dream happen, why that dream matters, whatever. When we lack that kind of core, then we have a kind of vacuum, and anything anybody else offers us just goes naturally in to fill that space. And in that moment, it feels like, oh, okay, I should be an engineer then, I guess. Wow, I never thought of that. I guess I'll go look into engineering, But we only fall prey to that because we didn't have anything in there to begin with. So when I'm coaching people, which is very often at midlife, and I'm 100% with you, I did not have a midlife crisis. I had a professional crossroads moment, but it wasn't a crisis. I just had to make a hard choice, and it turned out to be the best choice I'd ever made in my whole life. So I'm with you 100% on that. But I do think that I think midlife is the point where you begin to try to reconcile who you dreamed of being with who you actually became. I think, I've known people who hit this at 32, Lisa. It's not a 50, 60 thing. It can be, but it's that point at which you wake up one morning and you say, holy smokes, I dreamed of this and I became this. And the attempt to reconcile that is what causes a lot of angst, which makes people go through. So when I have a coaching client who's in that moment, I have 4 questions I like to ask them. I won't belabor these, I promise. I'll say them real fast if I may. But I think the point is you start finding your own answers instead of listening to other people. You don't need another internet guru. You don't need another podcast, if you'll forgive me. You don't need, you don't necessarily need these things. What you need is to go inside and find answers that are your answers. So the 4 things I focus on is, number 1, when have you ever felt happy or fulfilled? When have you? So in other words, look backward before you try to go forward. When have you ever? I was a CEO. I did this very exercise for myself in the midst of my burnout, and all my happiest moments were when I wasn't the CEO.
Oh, wow.
Bad to say that. Yeah, isn't that something? So when I listed the very best moments of my life so far, none of them happened to be in that role. They were all about other things. So when have you been happy? What were you doing? Who are you doing it with? What was it that lit you up? That's number 1. Number 2 is, who do you feel called to serve? Do you like working with young people? Do you like midlifers? Do you like coaching? Do you like practical skills? What is it you feel born to do? And does that match your strengths? Do you have any talents at all? Are there any signs from the universe that this is one of the things, you came here to be able to do? And then I think the third one is, what gifts do you bring? Are you really good at this? And then the fourth and last, let me speed up a little bit, is what impact do you ultimately want to make? My favorite question in coaching, Lisa, and I think you've spoken to me about this before, is how do you want to be remembered? And so is what you're doing now how you want to be remembered? The person you are right now, is that how you want to be remembered? And sadly, half the people I work with would say, well, no. So wouldn't today be a great day to then begin becoming the person you want to be remembered as? And maybe that's a person who was more patient. Maybe that's a person who was more giving. Maybe that's a person who gave themselves freedom to explore their creative talents. I don't know. I don't know what it would be, but I know that answer turns out to be a big breakthrough answer for saying, all right, from this day forward, I'm going to chart my course toward a different destination. And I'm going to chart it toward the person I want to be remembered as, rather than the person I have for many years spent my life becoming.
Well, Jim, I will say to our listeners that I regret this is not a paid podcast, because right here you just got a master coaching session with these 4 questions. They are amazing. And I can see that it's really recalling, really looking at internally who you are and how you felt during this time. And a couple of podcast episodes ago, I talked about when people would say the answers aren't outside, they're just inside. And I used to think, are they written on the inside of my eyelids? Where do I find this? But it is this exploration that we have. And as I, hear this, what do you want to do, and where are your gifts, and how do you want to be remembered? This really leads us down the path of purpose, right? And so I know purpose is very much a driver of your life, as it is in mine. It's in the name of the podcast. But how would you begin to counsel or coach people? And I run into people like this. I don't have a purpose. They're frantic because they don't have a purpose. They're searching everywhere for purpose. And they think there's something wrong with them because they haven't identified their purpose yet. How do you begin to address that?
Oh, this is great. But I share this frustration. I hear it in your voice, a sort of a gentle frustration that what ought to be a really simple thing has been taught to people to be so complicated, And Lisa, the place I start usually catches people completely by surprise, but it's because I say, you don't find your purpose. There's no such thing as finding your purpose. Your purpose is not lost. It's not your car keys. They're not lost, right? It's there. What you may need to do is build your purpose. So the metaphor that works for me, let's see if it works for lots of people over our broadcast today, is I like to think of building purpose like building a wall. And when you build a wall, the first thing you do is you lay down the cornerstone, the stone around which everything else becomes relative. So what is your cornerstone? What is it? What is it you most fundamentally think you came into the world to do? If you could do anything at all, the old question goes, what would you do? What would bring you the most fulfillment? So lay down a cornerstone. And then you build on top of that wall the things we've just mentioned here. Well, what do I have skills and talents innately to do? Great. What do I have access to mentors and guides to teach me that I don't know how to do? Great. Lay another stone. What brings me joy? Lay another stone, And then ultimately, what do I hope will be the only thing maybe people will remember about me? What is that stone? So I think of it, and please forgive the metaphor, but it's just like building a wall by you lay these stones down. You don't walk around and say, oh, there's my purpose. It's over there. How did it get over there? That's not how it works. You build it brick by brick. And sometimes you lay a stone and then you take a stone back off. Sometimes you lay a stone and you think, wait a minute, that was an attractive stone, but it wasn't my stone. That's for somebody else. Let me put that on the ground, pick up another one. So I love the imagery of building your purpose rather than finding your purpose. And then that slow, steady, discoverable, prayer-filled, optimistic journey that takes you, finally, you discover by looking backward, oh my gosh, I've built a whole wall, because you did it stone by stone. You may not have even realized it. So that's a way that works for me. And I like to guide people through that. If we were laying this stone this week, what would that be? And of course, sometimes our answers that come from within are the greatest insights we ever get, right? More than any books and I'm great with books and everything else, but sometimes the stillness and the asking a question, not from here, but from here, as you said already today, great insight comes, and now you've got that piece of your puzzle solved. You go on to the next piece.
Yes. That's a beautiful way to explain it, the building a wall. And I think also putting that stone on, seeing how it sets, and it just doesn't fit right. So being able to take it off. But also, as we evolve as humans, as we grow, perhaps the wall that we had is no longer working. Perhaps we need to go build a different wall. So it's not something that we pop into this world. It's downloaded into us. It's told this is what you must do, but it's really building that and evolving and massaging it as we go along. So that is a great metaphor in that, Jim. So that's awesome. Another one of our LinkedIn post, we mentioned about the stories we tell ourselves. And I talk very often about this. I talk about the stories we tell the world, the stories we tell ourselves, and the stories buried inside of our souls. But the stories we tell ourselves are some of the stories that have the ability to hold us back from becoming all we can be. And what people don't realize is we have the power to choose those stories, how much power that we give them. The power that do we even want to listen to them? We can shine a light on them to see if they're grounded in reality, or we can choose to continue to believe them. So I know probably most of your coaching clients come to you with this story they believe about themselves. How do you help them take back control of those stories?
They do. Isn't it interesting that very seldom does a person walk figuratively in the door and say, I have no idea where I am. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no opinions about anything. I'm an empty cup. Pour something into me. If that ever happens, I'll let you know, but it has not happened. I've coached over 700 people. It never happened even once, right? But what people do come in with is sort of a bag of puzzle pieces with no idea how they fit. And so what happens I think in these moments is that a person looks at the table at all the pieces of the puzzle, trying to understand how they fit, but not really knowing that some of it's painstaking in the beginning. Now, Lisa, I'm not a puzzle person, but you know how some people are so good with puzzles and they'll say, I always do the outer edges first, or I always do the corners first, I always do the middle first. I can't do any of that. I'm not gifted in that way. But I like that imagery of nobody prepared you for the trial and error of figuring out exactly what you want. So I think there's that part of it. And then the second part, which is, I'm pretty passionate about this. I want to see how you resonate with it. There's a very famous person named Tim Ferriss who had a quote that meant a lot to me. And he said, life punishes the vague wish, but rewards the specific ask. Right now, can I just say it again? So if everybody listening, if somebody's driving their car, like, what was that? So Tim Ferriss is the author of this quote, but he said, life punishes the vague wish and rewards the specific ask. So to me, the person most emblematic of the circumstances you've beautifully described is a person who comes in with a lot of vague wishes, who hasn't done the work to bring rigorous clarity to any one of those wishes. It's sort of like, Lisa, you were walking down the street one day and you discovered Aladdin's lamp just laying in the grass. And you said, oh, wow, that's Aladdin's lamp. And you picked it up and you rubbed the lamp and boom, here came the genie. Except in this story, you don't get 3 wishes, you only get 1. And you can't wish for more wishes. So the genie pops out and says, gee, I don't know how I got here. And you're not the person I was supposed to meet. But since I'm here anyway, I'll give you a wish. What do you want? And in that moment, most of us would say, can you come back tomorrow? I need to think about it. Which is not a condemnation, but it's an illustration that we are walking around every day of our lives not knowing what we really want. We had our moment, the genie popped out. We could have said anything, right? Except we didn't know. And that story is a metaphor of how I think most people are when they come to coaching. They have a bag full of puzzle pieces, no idea how to put them together. But if you stop for a moment and say, well, gosh, what makes you the most happy? What are you doing when you feel the most alive? Half of my clients will say, I don't even remember feeling fully alive. So we have to start from that place. And I think it's not understanding that you have to start from where you are. I don't know if you know the old Buddhist expression, no path goes all the way. This is a very powerful 3,000-year-old statement from the Tao Te Ching. No path goes all the way. Well, they've been on a path, and they've come to the shocking realization that the path they're on won't take them all the way to the life they really wanted. But then coach can say, well, of course it doesn't. No path goes all the way. And then suddenly it's not like I failed at anything. I just came to the end of this. Oh, you mean all I've got to do is step over to another path? Yeah. And all you got to do is decide which path, because there's 4 or 5 of them available to you. So in that sense, we write the ending to our own story. Many of us would say, I didn't write the beginning. My dad was an influence. I had to be a doctor. That's okay. I don't care. So you didn't write the beginning, but you get to write the ending. And you are not only the writer, you're the cinematographer, you're the musician, this is your movie, So let's just start from today to create the ending that you want, and that painful beginning perhaps will lose all the energy it had and all the hold it had on you.
That's very empowering, the thought that we do have the power to write our own story and be such an integral part of that. But I think when you would ask people, what is it you want? The first thing comes to mind is, what is it I'm supposed to want? Right? So I followed what everybody told me to do up to here. What is it the next thing that I'm supposed to want? Right? Because we never take the time. We haven't given ourselves permission to really look at that. So that's really good. So Jim, you talked about new levels of life will require new levels of you. And that can be really scary for people to consider. I know a lot of times we hear about fear of failure, and there are some people who embrace failure. I'm one of them because I don't really ever fail. I just try something and I grow. What worked or it didn't, that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means I just need to go another way. It's a lesson I learned. But I would propose that many more people are really fearful of success. It would be very interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Is that what you encounter in some of your clients? What are some signs of that?
And at the risk of being too bold, not some of my clients, I think all of my high achievers. So I have a large group of wonderful people I get the privilege of coaching on some frequency basis throughout the year. And more than half of them I tease them by saying captains of the universe. They've just done it all. They graduated from the elite school, they made all the grades, and they've done all these things. But what does happen to all of them is the moment you reach the peak, the brain says, how are we going to stay here? While you're climbing to the peak, all of your thoughts are about how to reach the peak. It's just, what's the next thing? How do I do the next thing and the next opportunity and the next assignment? But I promise you this, when you're a high achiever, and maybe you and I are classic high achievers, I don't know. We're still in pursuit of the things we're after. The first thought you have is, but what if I can't stay here? Which is just a crazy thought, right? That's just your brain making you crazy. But immediately the brain goes to fear of losing what you've gained, rather than saying, how do I stand on what I've gained and reach to the next thing that will make me happy and joyful in my life? Well, the people who do that the most and who suffer from it the most, I think, are those for whom their compass is success. So I guide all the decisions of my life. I make all the decisions of my life. I navigate my life based on the single lighthouse on the hill called success. Yeah. And if I can just get there, I'll be happy. And it's really the greatest lie ever perpetrated on the human race is achieve enough and you'll be happy. It's just not true. But Lisa, you've heard me say this. I have come to believe passionately that joy is the valid compass and success is a byproduct of joy. So that if we were just willing for just a moment in our lives to say, what makes me feel fulfilled? What makes me feel like I was born to do this? What makes me get up in the morning and say, oh, yes, another day, I get to do it. It's not a platitude. It's possible to live that way. But the thing that makes you live that way is you are navigating toward joy. And when you do that, success is very often the byproduct. But if success is the goal, joy is seldom the byproduct. So if you were holding a thought from me today, anybody, it's that joy is a valid compass. Navigate your life toward joy. And if you're talented and you work hard, you will find that you are successful. But it doesn't necessarily work the other way, that if you're successful, you will find joy. In fact, I've seldom seen that work when that's the navigational system.
Jim, that is so profound. And I think about the idea of the definition we're given of success. It's a 6 or 7 figure salary, an 8-figure business, a 10-figure, whatever it is. And how many people do you know that get there and they're happy? I want a private jet. Okay, now I have one. Now I want 2. Like, I've heard that story as well. But this is where what you do is not who you are. And if we chase joy, what that does is it allows you to own the definition of joy rather than allowing other people to tell you what success is. So that is just, I'm going to carry that with me for days and chew on that for a while. I think there's more to this that I want to unpack, but that's a great thing. Well, Jim, it would not be a conversation between us if we didn't talk about purpose. And one of the most just expansive, well thought, impactful books in our lives is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So many people, it has changed their life. And you did a post on this a few weeks ago, and you pulled out a quote. Now, the quote that we often hear from Viktor Frankl is, when we know the why for our existence, we're able to bear almost any how. When we know the why for our existence, we are able to bear almost any how. But you pulled out the text that preceded that. That was very impactful for you, and I want to read it for our listeners. When we become conscious of the responsibility we bear toward a human being who affectionately waits for us, or to an unfinished work, we will never be able to throw away our life. That was so interesting to consider, and it's one that we haven't heard before. So I would love to know how that quote impacted you.
Oh, gosh, thank you. And I felt my whole heart just open up when you asked that. I don't know if you did, but
yes.
Wow, that was so. To Viktor Frankl, we all respectfully bow, because what an incredible story. Another day on another podcast, maybe we'll do all Viktor Frankl. Huge impact on my life, and his seminal book, Man's Search for Meaning, is you just need to read that book if you haven't. But I've read that book several times, and I've been through the audio version of it several times. And so I kind of felt a little hubris that I was sort of a Viktor Frankl guy. I don't know, I'm teasing a little bit. So imagine my surprise. I read this quote, and I've never heard it in my life. I've heard the beginning and the ending of it, but this middle part, I guess most people have left out when they're reciting this quote. And when it talks about your unfinished work affectionately waits for you, it makes me emotional right this minute. Mm-hmm. When I think of it, and in my post, I related to the times when my daughter was young, and I would be picking her up from an event, and I would, like all parents, I'd be in the car line, and I would watch her come out of the event or the school and scan all the cars looking for me. So I could see her eyes going back and forth. And then her expression when she would see me, I was like, there he is, there it is. Well, that's how that struck me, that my unfinished work is waiting for me, affectionately waiting for me, not with judgment or condemnation or rules or standards. No, my unfinished work is affectionately waiting for me. In other words, the work we were born to do, the thing that would most bring us joy and fulfillment, is sitting there hoping that today is the day. Today's the day. You know, you were born to be a writer. You just haven't put any words on paper yet. Or you were born to be a baker and you just don't have the dough in the oven. Or you were born to be a teacher. You haven't found your students, but you were born for these things. And whatever that thing is, it is affectionately waiting for you, will break your heart in the best possible way. And what I mean is break open your heart and to say in some way, I'm coming. I'm going to do this. And even if I am, as you and I have already said today, the CFO who wants to paint, that's a real story. I can buy the paints. I can take a class. I can sketch out a design. I can read a book or listen to a podcast on art. You know, in other words, I can come toward you. If you're affectionately waiting for me, I can't leap to you. Very few of us are able to simply pivot our lives in a radical and maybe damaging way by leaping off of a cliff and just somehow hoping we can build a parachute on the way down, you know. But what we can do is begin to take steps. And I promise everybody this. I was a CEO of a great company. I felt that I was a good CEO, and I loved that work for a long time. But inside, I wanted to be a teacher and a writer. I always did. And when I did my exercise to say, when have I been the happiest? 8 out of 12 of the moments were teaching or writing. So I knew what I wanted to do. It was always inside me, affectionately waiting for me. But the day I said yes to it is the ultimate pivot. The ultimate pivot is when you say yes to the thing you've always known was affectionately waiting for you. And from the moment you take the tiniest little step toward it, you feel something at more depth than you've ever felt any other time, perhaps. You know you just took a step in the right direction because your whole soul resonates with the change in the compass that just happened. Even though I'm still going to be a CFO and I still need to make some money and I'm going to do this for another year or so, I'm now going toward the thing that is affectionately, lovingly, patiently has been waiting for me all these years. And in my case, that's where I was. I finally became a writer and I finally became a teacher. And it began what has now been the greatest chapter of my life and whose culmination point is today. I get to have this conversation with you today, all because I said yes to what was waiting for me all along. So anyway, I hope I've said that well.
Yes. And I am so inspired. And I know our listeners, I'd just like to challenge you. What is affectionately waiting for you? And what is one step you can take today? Doesn't have to be a big one, but what is one step you can take today that will move you in that direction? Well, Jim, I thank you so much. There's been so much value in this conversation that has grown from these comments in our LinkedIn post. And again, continue to follow Jim, continue to follow me on LinkedIn. We'll continue these conversations. We may be back for another round, but contact for you, Jim. What's the best way for people to reach you?
I have a website, jimhuling.com, but the easiest and best place for me is LinkedIn. And it's as simple as Jim Huling, Jimhuling, Jim Huling on LinkedIn. And as you've heard Lisa say already, she and I, but I particularly post every single day something, a thought about leadership, about life, about purpose. My small contribution to the better world I dream of is a little bitty post every day with some good thought. So if you're interested in continuing this dialogue, as you said, Lisa, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
All right. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. So I hope everyone, you were able to get what you needed today. If you like this episode, I'd love it if you would like the episode, subscribe, leave a review. That's how other people can find the show. So until next time, go chase your passion, turn it into helping others with purpose, and show up as your personal brand of integrity. It's what's going to help you live a life of so much more on the way to discovering your legendary self. Jim Huling, thanks so much for being with us.